What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Lake Powell how-to series. And in this one we're going to talk about when you want to decide to go, like what time is the best to go based on kind of what's biting, what species you want to target at a particular time. So as ghetto as it might be, I thought this might be kind of the best way to demonstrate this for you guys. I made just kind of a handmade, homemade chart, and up top you can see we got all of our months up here throughout the year, and then I put kind of the 7 main species that are in Lake Powell, starting with striper, walleye, crappie, smallmouth, largemouth, bluegill, catfish. And so what this chart demonstrates is kind of the higher the bar goes, kind of the easier that species is to target, at least for us. I know this might not be very specific or scientific again, but again, this series and this video it's just kind of based on our experience and kind of what we want to share and how we've been able to fish Powell and all that. So let's start with all the species. So all the species I put a line throughout the entire year, other than bluegill here. Bluegill might be kind of the only species that really kind of shuts down in the winter months. Other than that, no species fully shuts down at Powell. Even in the winter, depending on the weather, you can run into bass and crappie and walleye and even catfish. You can kind of specifically target them and find some success. So with that being said, let's just start with striper. Now striper has, I put the most readily available species across the board. We are not very good at it yet, but even in the winter months you can go down and specifically target stripers in the winter and find success doing that. And then in the spring, they're kind of readily available. You can troll for them. You can always target stripers. And then in the summer months, I kind of put them at full go as far as availability and being able to catch them, because throughout these months is when you're running into striper boils, and that's really fun. So that's them on stripers. Walleye, in our experience, again, kind of goes throughout the entire year. You can go down and target walleye. And then what we've found is when we start going down in March and then April and May, we'll run into some. But then our best trips with walleye have been all throughout May. And that kind of correlates with the walleye coming off of their spawn. And generally they like to feed in low light, but in May, like, it doesn't matter. They're super hungry, and they're everywhere. So May is kind of the best month for them. And then they kind of tails off into June. As the water warms up, they'll kind of go a little bit deeper, and so they're not as readily available, but you can still target them throughout the whole year. Crappie, kind of the same thing. Out of all the species on Powell, crappie is probably the #1 species that we struggle specifically targeting. I mean, obviously we do know that they like to hang around wood and brush when that's available, but other than that, they're generally kind of suspending. So, but we still do catch quite a few, like in April and May, but to be quite honest, it's kind of by accident. So if anything, the crappie for us is kind of that would be the most, we don't know the most about them. Smallmouth, you can catch them all year round. As soon as the water starts warming up, Wayne always says look for water temperatures starting out in the 60s, and that's of course obviously true. But anytime you approach the spring, anytime you approach March through mid-June, as long as you have, well, let me back that up. So if you start to go down in March, anytime March approaches and there's good weather, you can catch the bass down there. And then once April and then May hits, they're less dependent on weather because the water's already warm and they've already kind of started in their habits. So you have to be less dependent on weather in May looking for bass. So those smallmouth will definitely increase in activity through spawning and then bedding and just chasing everything and just being all over the place. So April and May is just a huge time for them. They'll continue biting throughout June, and then once the water gets warmer, they'll also go a little bit deeper, and they're a little bit harder to target. They'll go into kind of deeper, bigger rock structure that's more connected with deep water. So the largemouth and the smallmouth do kind of, they definitely change their habits. But again, for both of them, you got April and May. They're just all over the place and they're awesome. Yeah, so I mean, I guess that kind of covers largemouth as well. I think you can catch more of them, at least some of the bigger ones, starting earlier in March, by our experience. Generally it's said that the bigger fish tend to move up, meaning they come up from deeper water earlier, so the big fish tend to do that. And obviously the largemouth, they'll stay active all throughout summer, but again, you kind of gotta, in May you can kind of just go whenever, wherever, and you can find them. Once it gets super hot, you kind of gotta be a little bit more tactful. Bluegill, they are probably, out of all these species, they're the most dependent probably on water temperature. They really, really love high water temperatures. So the prime time for them is, right in the middle of the summer there. And then catfish. So catfish I've seen reports of some really big ones caught, January, February. And the biggest thing that we do to target catfish is anytime we go down, if we'll target them off the back of our boat at our camp. We'll just throw out some bait and we'll just wait. And generally starting mid-April, that technique can be successful. The catfish, they're always around. And then once they kind of like warmer water too, once that water starts warming up a lot, we'll catch a lot of them like on our boil trips. The big catfish will come right up next to the bank. A lot of the times I've caught even a couple pretty nice sized catfish even on top water. So they really like the warm water as well. So what can we learn from this awesome homemade graph? Obviously there's a lot of things. We need to start going for stripers in the winter months. Definitely need to start targeting that. We need to pick up on targeting crappie, and I need to keep and start learning a lot more about how to specifically target them. Hopefully with kind of a front sonar on the bow, we can maybe target them a little bit better. But kind of what you want to glean off of this is, especially if you want to try to recreate what we do and kind of target smallmouth but kind of go for everything, this is kind of what we look at. So if you want to do that, you're looking, the prime times to go is definitely like middle to late March all the way up through the beginning of June. And if you can go down at one of those times, then you're going to put yourself in the most prime position to catch a lot of species and have a successful trip. So hopefully this graph helps you guys, points you guys kind of in the right direction, and maybe once again gives you more of a bite-sized piece of information to kind of take and go from there, instead of taking in a lot of information, kind of narrow down your information just a little bit more. Alright, thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.